Salutations, respect viewers. I'm George from Ireland, and here I am at the mausoleum of Richard Burton. Now, I hasten to clarify, I'm talking about the explorer, Richard Francis Burton, not the celebrated actor, because the actor just took Richard Burton as a stage name in honour of his teacher, a Mr. Burton. The actor, Richard Burton, his surname was something else. It was something more identifiably Welsh. So this Richard Burton here has got this unexampled tomb, so far as I can tell. I've never seen the like of it, and it's notable for having these Islamic symbols there, the crescent moon with the star, with the seven-pointed star. So a symbol of Islam, though he was a Christian, he was an Anglican, and here he is buried in a Catholic graveyard because his wife was a Catholic. You see the crucifix, typical for Catholicism, rather than the cross. Reformed churches don't have a cross, as in it's empty. The image of Jesus is not affixed there too. And then an inscription about him, some of the biodata, some of the things, the honours he was granted. Being knights of various chivalric orders, and a poem composed in his honour by Justin Huntley McCarthy. I shan't read it for you quite now, but it looks like the sort of tent that the Bedouin would make out of goat hair that you'd find in the desert. So he had the most extraordinary life story. He's born in Torquay. The only other famous thing to happen in Torquay is that the locale for Fawlty Towers. A more different man from Basil Fawlty would be difficult to imagine. This guy was exceptionally capable. So he's partly Irish, so I can claim from Ireland, hurrah, that I don't think he ever set foot in Hibernia, unfortunately. Anyway, because on his father's side, yeah, a bit Irish. Anyway, so he grew up in an upper middle class family, and he spent some time in France as a child, mastered the French language, and he was a polyglot. He had the absolute command of about a dozen languages, and not easy ones like French or Italian, but they're like Romani, Gujarati, Urdu, Arabic, and so forth. Anyway, he went to a school on Richmond Green in Richmond, London. We're at Mortlake here. The church in this churchyard is St Mary Magdalene. Now, I have to correct myself because I find myself instinctively pronouncing it Magdalen, but I've got to remember outside Oxford University it's always pronounced Magdalene, as in St Mary Magdalene, the possible wife of Jesus, the one who wiped his face with a cloth as he was on Via Dolorosa. But is that Veronica, because Veron Icon, the true image, hence the name. All right, so doing a 360 of his tomb here. And how large it is, and I was astonished to see this ladder back here, so you can climb up. I shan't do it here; it'd be slightly perilous. I mean, if I wasn't filming me, if I was just filming that, I might do it. And if I worked out to put the light on, and suppose you see the two coffins in there, but it's more like, it seems to me they're more like buried under the floor. Visibility is not that good; it's not that bright today. Anyway, I believe he and his wife had no children. But fast forward, he went to Trinity College, Oxford. Well, obviously, the main learning classics. He went to Radley School, not so far as I'm aware, I could be wrong. He's someone that's not quite 4 o'clock in the morning. One of my loyal viewers, Miss Malloy, has tuned in. Your fidelity to my channel is most warmly appreciated. So back to Richard Burton. So he was a dashing young blade. He liked falconry and so on, and his eclectic interests went far beyond the curriculum. He was always an audacious sort, one to challenge authority, certainly no shrinking violet and no conformist. But he attended a steeplechase, which is to say a horse race across the countryside. This is about 1840. He was born in 1821, and there weren't such forms of entertainment as you have today, like the cinema or telly or anything like that, or car races. So a steeplechase was about as daring as it got. So that's you're not on a race course with your horse. They're jumping over ditches and hedges and fallen trees and so forth. So it's hair raising. But anyway, he went back and he boasted to the college authorities about it, and the undergraduates weren't allowed to attend this. I'm not quite sure. Maybe the company was unsuitable. Ruffians, and these were the sons of gentlefolk. But he might have been simply rusticated, but no, he was sent down. So after he was sacked from Oxford University, he thought, well, what should I do now? Okay, I should join the army of the East India Company. The Honourable East India Company existed back then, and indeed had its own army. Okay, so some of the units in India were the East India Company's army, not the British Army, though that was there too. So it was highly paid. It was paid about 50% more than the British Army, and actually British Army officers until, say, the 1860s often purchasing their commissions. but if you weren't that well off, this is a much better option. Obviously, you had to be able to read and write. There was a lot of class prejudice at the time. You saw him on the stage in San Francisco. You're talking about the actor Richard Burton. I'm talking about the 19th century explorer. Their two lifetimes didn't overlap, I'm afraid. This chap is born about a century before the celebrated actor. Anyhow, this Sir Richard Francis Burton, this this explorer, he then took ship to India. He was hoping to fight in Afghanistan, but that did British history. The retreat from to Jalalabad fort, all but one man slain. You can see the famous painting of that lugubrious British arms. Anyway, so Burton, he served in Gujarat for some time. Eventually found it a little bit uninspiring. He also served in the Stop for him. He got a few languages under his belt, is he wanted to go and curiosity killed him to avoid detection, and he something like that. But he managed to go there and spent a long time adoring whatever that meteorite is on the corner of the Kaaba, that huge cube, that house supposedly built by Abraham of his journey, and obviously slain on the spot. Various texts such as 1001 Nights, which is more commonly known as Arabian Nights, which have been rendered into French and from that into English, but the Victorians often Baudelarized it, but he gave people an unabridged translation. Hello, I'm back again. I was saying Speke was his comrade in some of these peregrinations, going to the Great Lakes region of Africa, where Dr. Livingstone was to follow a few years later. So he was really taking his life in his hands. He could have succumbed to malaria or any of these tropical diseases which couldn't be cured back then. I'm not sure they'd got quinine just back then. Did I pronounce it correctly? Quinine or quinine? I know not. So it wasn't at West Africa, at least the white man's grave. Though later he joined the diplomatic service, he'd been knighted, and he served in the Spanish colony we now call Equatorial Guinea, on an island there. And he was very curious about anthropology, so he was the most extensive writer on this subject. He was a British consul in various other places, Damascus, and latterly in Trieste, the Italian-speaking city, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time, and indeed that's where he died. So his body was brought back here. So despite knowing so much about religious studies, he professed his disbelief in the supernatural. So he rejected every faith, and he'd studied a few. But he's laid to rest here in this extraordinary tomb. So he was a man who achieved so much, he packed so much into his lifetime, into his, how many years was it? His 69 years. So that is Richard Burton, a man of extraordinary audacity and energy, physical courage. Anyway, that's enough about him, someone who deserves further study. There's a memorial to his colleague John Hanning Speke in Hyde Park. I might do a video there at some point. Right, that's enough about Richard Burton for the moment. The other Richard Burton, if I could find a place relevant to him, I might do a video about him. What else are they going to say about this Burton here? So it really shocked Victorian society, the unexpurgated translations of various Indian erotic texts like the Perfume, the Scented Garden, and Kama Sutra and so forth. That Hindu text on the amorous arts. All right, so please follow me and on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to my channel. You're getting some idea of the scale of it now. I'm quite some way away from it, and make sure you donate to me on Patreon and PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com, who incidentally, as I mentioned, steeplechasers, that was invented by Mr. Callahan. No relation, so far as I know, though he was from County Cork. All right, so switching off now, everybody. Right, toodle pip. Switch off.